Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I want to celebrate with you a truly remarkable astrological event. It's the merging of the energy of the Sun, but also the mighty Jupiter with a Cazimi on the 18th of May at 6:45 p.m. and at 28 degrees and 18 minutes. Now, a Cazimi essentially means in the heart of. As the Sun moves forwards, it applies its radiance to the energy of Jupiter, which itself is very much to do with positivity. And this creates a real uplifting vibration that we can all tune into. I'm going to go through all of this. We have collectively gone through a period of quite challenging financial conditions, particularly to do with everyday finance. I'm going to trace that story back to when it began in the autumn of 2022 with a mighty lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. And that will give us some extra perspective, but I'm also going to share with you what this event truly means. Now I'm going to do that through the event chart, so at the exact moment the Cazimi occurs, what are the other planetary influences informing this event? Now it could be argued that this is like a solar return for Jupiter. There won't be one for its transition through the sign of Gemini, but there will be the next one on the 25th of June in the sign of Cancer in 2025. Could we argue that Jupiter has been given a rebirth here? Well, I think that's colourful language, but it's certainly an energy which can catapult us forwards over the next 12 months. And ironically, just before Jupiter is about to alight in the air sign of Gemini. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that 45% of people who enjoy my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to grow by becoming a subscriber, and do click or tap on that bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you will get an update. Thank you so much to all my patrons. You can download an in-depth Jupiter factoid. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so from $3 a month. Please see the link below for more. Now, if you'd like to get your free daily horoscope, your written horoscope, fired to your device each morning, you can do so. I've been writing these for near to 30 years, but also I provide an overview of the dominating planetary influence of each day. So that gives us the big picture, plus you can enjoy your zodiac sign from the perspective of your ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Please see the link below for more. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. You can check out my testimonials by seeing the link below. I don't edit these. As they come in, I share them. Please see what other people have said about working with me. Now, if you'd like to take that step forwards into embracing more serious astrology, away from just zodiac astrology, take advantage of my special written reports. These are great value, provide a lot of information. My life roadmap will help you to understand the patterns that are played out in your life so far and get a much more intimate understanding of how to work with these. And the 12-month forecast, if you get that as well, you get 30% off, and that provides the information of all the transits moving in the sky and how they interact with your unique natal blueprint. Now, if you know your tropical natal astrology, why not check out my Draconic package? This is based on your soul or karmic entry into the planet. It's the roots of your being. It can be very different from your natal chart, but the same principle. Character analysis, but also a forecast, and 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So let's just explore first of all the energy of Jupiter. It rules 2 zodiac signs of Sagittarius. Here it's very much about optimism, growth, self-confidence, risk-taking, being very independent, freedom-loving. Can be to do with travel, international affairs, borders, Certainly a love of culture, history and philosophy. It's the ultimate big picture influence. But the role of Jupiter in Pisces, I think, is often underrated. Here it's very much about faith, the expansion of the spiritual dimension, not so much about the tangible world. But of course the sign of Taurus is very much to do with tangibility. It's an earth sign. It's ruled by the sensual energies of Venus, but it's also fixed. And over the last few years, 4 times since 2019, Uranus, the planet which is very provocative, has been really shaking things up, and in truth, in a not always particularly easy way. Now, Jupiter moved into Taurus just over a year ago, and it has given us an opportunity to try to work with those Sagittarian and Piscean themes through the sign of Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus is very interested in the acquisition of good things, whether it's wealth or whether it's nice possessions or appreciation of good food. And certainly with Venus very close to this event, enjoying good food and good wine may be something that we can all do to celebrate this event. Now, the Sun in the sign of Taurus definitely asks us to think very much about everyday finance, about our self-worth and our values. Because of the Venusian influence, Taurus can be about food, it can be about nice clothes and nice wine. It can also be about life foundations, because we're looking to create some kind of stability after the thrust of the energy that comes through the zodiac with the first zodiac sign of Aries, which of course is fire. So we're looking to convert something that is much more permanent. But the fixed nature of the sign of Taurus means it can slow down Jupiter a little bit, but in a positive way, because one of Jupiter's downside is it can be a little bit overconfident and promise more than it can realistically deliver. So the earthiness of Taurus and the practicality of the sign is good to offset that potential for Jupiter to over-egg the proverbial pudding. Now, Cazimi is when the Sun moves forwards, connects exactly with that other player. The Sun, of course, is at the heart of our whole existences. But Jupiter is so mighty. It's huge. But this application, or Cazimi, essentially it's an Arabic word which means in the heart of. So what we're going to get is the amplification of the energy of Jupiter. But you know, there's much more to it than that. So on the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart from a solar perspective. And the reason there's much more than just the Jupiter and Sun Cazimi is that we need to be mindful of the energy of Neptune. The reason for this, you can see that Neptune's just on that last degree in Pisces, the anaretic point, and therefore is forging a beautiful sextile to Jupiter. So the two rulers of Pisces are mutually receptive and supporting each other. Earth supports water. That's the bottom of the river and the bottom of the sea. So that foundation supports the flow of that energy from Neptune. And Neptune in Pisces is very spiritual. So it doesn't follow that we only have to be focused on the material part of this conjunction. So it could be lucky. If you're someone who likes a little bit of a flutter, then for sure the Sun combining with Jupiter in this way is something to really work with. But if we can also be conscious of how we can raise our sense of values, which is very Tauran, but in a non-tangible way, then the energy of Neptune is very helpful to that as well. But because the ruler of the sign of Taurus, Venus, is so very close to this combination, this gives even more glow up. So if we are someone who wants to improve our financial situation after what has been such a tough time, this does give us a greater sense of possibility. But let's just look back to that lunar eclipse which occurred on the 8th of November 2022. What happened was the moon in Taurus was opposite the Sun. When the moon and the Sun are opposite, they're chaffing, they're not unified, they're competing. The sign of Taurus is everyday finance, the sign of Scorpio is long-term or shared finance. But next to the Sun in Scorpio was Venus, which is detrimented in the sign of Scorpio, but also Mercury was in the mix as well. And that maybe gave us an overblown sense of possibilities. But because the lunar eclipse was next to the very erratic energies of Uranus, and both sets of opposite influences were speared in the middle by a T-square from Saturn in Aquarius, that's us all collectively. Pretty well ever since that point, we've been on the end of some quite challenging financial conditions. Now, I know what's happened in Ukraine has had a big impact on the cost of fuel in terms of oil and gas, animal feed and fertilizers, and that's all fed into the increased prices that we have. Well, I feel that that event, from an astrological viewpoint, was the priming point. So when Jupiter moved into Taurus last year, we may have thought, and some astrologers may have claimed, that everything was going to be hunky-dory. But since then, interest rates have gone up on borrowing, and it's not actually been the panacea that some people may have claimed. So what may make this event different? Well, I do feel it's because there is such a lot of harmonization in terms of Venus's location to Jupiter. So the two planets of fortune, the lesser and the greater benefics in traditional astrology, clustered around the Sun, and the Sun in Taurus, just coming to the end of its journey, has been pushing us to be more responsible. Also Saturn, if we think about Saturn, that's in the sign of Pisces. So we're coming to the end of a big cycle, which is going to become much more obvious when Saturn makes its way into Aries, briefly in 2025, and then back into Aries in 2026, and that will be the start of a complete new epoch. So we're really becoming much more conscious of the outcome of a lot of things that have occurred over a lot of time, because the sign of Taurus can give us a great appreciation for natural things. So that could be homegrown vegetables, organics, eating very simple but home cooked food. It could be where we get into nature in a very natural way. But the world has become so focused on consumerism, and that consumerism, of course, has taken place with not always being mindful of getting the things we want quickly, availability in the supply chains, which is what supermarkets want to tell us, choice. So we tend to get a lot of fruit and vegetables that are out of season because they're grown somewhere else in the world, and of course that creates air miles, which creates pollution. So we are seeing in a way a culmination here, but I do feel there's some positivity, and interest rates have not quite come down yet, but the equity markets are beginning to pick up, so there could be a sense of confidence. But of course what happens in the Ukraine and also with China and Taiwan could have a radical impact on whether our financial situation starts to improve over the next 12 months as we go through the benefit of this gorgeous event. So I feel that we're all being encouraged to become much more grounded, much more earthy, much more aware of the cost in terms of production, but also the cost in terms of the money, and perhaps also be a bit thriftier and, where possible, recycle things, make use of what we do have in a more effective way. But the problem with Venus and Jupiter is they can be tempted by excess. So if you are someone who has been on a diet, you could find that that's really going to be tested at this time, because whatever you do like, or whatever your fancy is, the chances are it's going to be super tempting at this point. Now, if you are someone with fixed planets, so that means Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, from around about 23 degrees where Venus is, right through to the last degree, the 29th degree, perhaps even the first couple of degrees in all the mutable signs, which is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, are going to feel this event quite keenly, because those are the angular positions. So the angle is the 1st, 7th, 4th and 10th houses. So that's important too. But I just want to draw your attention to the position of the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon, and also the midpoint between Venus and Mars. So the Sun-Moon midpoint is the balance of the chart. If we take the thrust of the Sun in Taurus, which is where we're wanting to put our energy, and the receptiveness of the Moon in the sign of Libra, where we're trying to find balance, that midpoint, which is the yin-yang of this particular event, is at 1 degree in the sign of Leo. So that's the 5th house. That's where we like to speculate. It can be where we can enjoy a flutter and games of chance. It's also where we like to enjoy pleasure to the nth degree. So that midpoint at 1 degree is squaring up with Mercury in Taurus, but also in an opposition with Pluto. So we have a T-square. And that can create tension. And having the midpoint opposite Pluto is really interesting. That intensifies our relationship. So Pluto suggests that there's going to be the potential for some push and pull where people see things differently. Now, the sign of Aquarius is very much about how we all network. The sign of Leo is about where we want to enjoy things for ourselves as individuals. And what Mercury is basically saying is that we need to think before we're too impulsive. But what about the midpoint between Venus and Mars? So this is the yin-yang of how we like to consume, but also relate, and perhaps also get intimate. And this is at 3 degrees in the sign of Taurus, so therefore very close to Mercury. So the Venus-Mars, and we need to think that Venus is the ruler of Taurus, therefore very much in keeping with this event. We need to think that what we crave and desire, Venus-Mars, very close to Mercury. Mercury can be impetuous. It is, in a way, anchored very well, very diligently by Mercury being in the sign of Taurus. But the midpoint in the sign of Leo is definitely about enjoyment. And the Pluto position is how that enjoyment plays out to others. So the cost of our consumption can create tensions. So over the next year, just be aware that if we want to go all in terms of partying, in terms of spending money, getting some luxury items in, treating ourselves to a big ticket item if we can afford it, there is going to be an outcome from that is going to collectively influence us. So that comes from that T-square. So that T-square is very, very powerful. But let's look at the event chart from a natal perspective. Now, this is based on the prime meridian, so that's Greenwich, and this gives us an ascendant in Scorpio. Isn't that interesting with that lunar eclipse that we had back in November 2022? In a way, we're getting a reflection of that energy. But I wanted to do the natal chart because I wanted to find out the houses that the posse of energy in Taurus would fall in. And in fact, it's the 7th house, with the exception of Mercury and the Venus-Mars midpoint. They're in the more brittle and precise 6th house. So it suggests our relationships are going to be very much about this event. So how we relate to each other, our values around relationships, is the big picture for the next 12 months. The midpoint between the Sun and the Moon remains in Leo, but it's in house 9. That's our philosophies. And Pluto's in house 3, how we actually discuss things on an everyday basis. And they still relate back to the Venus-Mars midpoint and also Mercury. So you can see from this chart, there's going to be a lot of conversation and discourse and points of view that can create tension. But we have an opportunity with all those other players, the 4 players in Taurus, to try to let go of always necessarily getting everything we want. So a bit of give and take, a bit of collaboration, a bit of cooperation will bring a lot of blessings to the world. And we can share things. So if we share the good things of life, that's a great way to make this particular event work so well for us. But these midpoints are something that some astrologers, I did see one astrologer who's quite well known on YouTube, said, oh, I can't be doing with all this midpoint stuff. You know, what's that about? Well, I can assure you in a natal horoscope, unless you're born on a new moon, a midpoint can often be very different from your sun or your ascendant, and that gives an astrologer a huge amount of insights into how your personality will play out. So midpoints are critical. So in Leo, it's definitely about partying, fun, and being very charismatic. But in the ninth house, it's about philosophies. The third house, the discussion, Pluto. The sixth house, where we can get tense if there are differences. So what that collective in Taurus is saying in the event chart from a Placidus viewpoint is we need to give and take. And of course, the sign of Taurus is fixed, can be a bit stubborn, but we do have the potential here to try to let go a little bit if we don't get everything exactly as we want. Please stay with me. I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect over the next year. So Aries, it definitely can be a good news story for you, but I feel it's all about expectations. We also need to be aware of your ruler Mars. Mars at the present time is in your sign and giving you a lot of thrust. So if you've got good ideas and therefore you've got a bit of a swagger about those good ideas, you may find that you're going to encounter people who are receptive to what you're trying to share with them. And of course, if you can also outline what the tangible benefit to them would be from your idea, then that's going to make it all the more sweet. So for sure, Venus and Jupiter together in your second house could see some money come to you unexpectedly. But as ever with astrology, it's what we do that really counts. So do try to be as proactive as possible. You might look at the weight situation. If you would like to lose a few pounds, you might think, well, look, I'm going to celebrate this event, a great time to get together with my friends, but then I'm really going to work hard at being a lot more physically active. And as you come to the end of May and go into June, because we are going to see a lot of energy sweeping in to the sign of Gemini, including Jupiter, which moves across the 25th or 26th of May, depending on where you're located. Being more active is something that Jupiter is going to engender in you. So you can live in the moment, enjoy it, party, but you could have some genuine good fortune financially over the next year. So Taurus, when Jupiter moved into your sign last May, you may have read or watched content which promoted the idea that everything in your celestial garden would come up smelling of roses. And some things may have done. But the thing with Jupiter is a go-getting influence. It's a positive influence. So it's not passive. We have to do something. So we have to be proactive. Now, if you have been really proactive over the last year, you could soon get your rewards financially, even by the end of May, or as we go into the start of June. And that may be absolutely delightful for you. But if you're someone who's been working on something more creative or something that you're much more invested in terms of your personal interest, I think the lovely thing about this event is you can see how far that plan has developed. So if it's not so much about money and it's more about just being very individualistic, but with confidence and extra thrust really in what really excites you, that's really what I feel is cresting at this time. But if you are someone who has been showcasing new ideas, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, you may have a financial upturn very, very soon for sure, but also some creative possibilities can really explode furthermore over the next 12 months. Gemini, the exciting thing for you is that Jupiter's about to land in your sign across the 25th or 26th of May, depending on where you live. But just before then, there's the advanced party of the Sun from the 21st and Venus from the 23rd. All gloriously linking back to Pluto in your fellow air sign of Aquarius. So a big shift's coming from you that's good for you, that's going to be much more outward going. But the thing with this 12th house gathering for you is good fortune can come to you for past good deeds. If you've been very caring and very supportive of someone, particularly someone who may have not always had it easy, don't be surprised if someone in some way does something to support you that's very, very generous themselves. Now, it could be a lovely bunch of flowers, some chocolates, a thoughtful text or card, or it could be something more significant, so some kind of legacy. But the other legacy that you can reap from this last year, as Jupiter comes to the end of its journey through the sign of Taurus, is an incredible expansion in your knowledge, which is what Jupiter represents, but certainly around your knowledge of the psychological domain. Anything to do with how we really tick at a deeper level. I feel that that's where you've really gained a lot of support from Jupiter in this last year. Now, it could be that you've got into healing in a big way as well. If you are a healer anyway, it's possible that your practice has grown, that a lot more people are aware of what you can do to support them. If you're someone who is very encouraging, a counsellor, a life coach, a psychic, all these kind of areas of activity have really been supported by Jupiter going through your 12th house. So, but most of all, I just think a much, much greater understanding of how the up and down and rather challenging energy of Uranus, particularly since March 2019, has been very, very edgy and difficult. I think Jupiter over the last year, and with this event, gives you a lot more perspective, which is very valuable. I think it's fair to say, Cancer, that you can be pretty protective in terms of who you interact with. If we think your 7th house is in the cool Capricorn, that's often what people can see. Someone who's rather reserved, sometimes all the way to shyness. And you don't necessarily connect to other people unless there's quite a lot of good mood music, because you're very sensory about how things feel. So over the last year, Jupiter may have seen you actually interacting with other people quite a lot more. But it may have not been a straight line. But at this particular juncture and over the next year, you could have a lot more connections with others. But there's going to be a bit of a dichotomy. Some of the more sociable dimensions that have manifested themselves could make way for much deeper, much more spiritual and psychological connections. So even though this can be a very jolly, very abundant and very uplifting combination, particularly with Venus in the mix, and you may meet up and mingle and do something very, very uplifting and playful almost immediately as Jupiter makes its way along with Venus and the Sun, or following on from them, into your 12th house. You may find yourself thinking much more about the quality rather than the quantity of the amount of friendships that you've got. But I feel that there has been some very pleasant interludes and connections, and maybe you've also had an opportunity to clarify what you want from your long term much more succinctly. So Leo, think of something in your life that you'd like to raise your profile around, particularly if it's to do with the arts, creativity. Could be if you're in an amateur dramatics group, or you're a performer, or you write your own music, or you paint, or it could be in your professional situation. Showcasing those talents can just attract an enormous amount of extra attention at this present time. Now, being a Leo, obviously being respected, critical, admired, really important, absolutely adored, we've got it all. But you know, at this particular time, all those things can peak for you. And then you're going to see a big shift very, very soon into a much more sociable part of your situation. But over the last few years, Uranus has been pushing and prodding you to break out, break the restraints, and really start to demonstrate the full warmth and charisma that you truly have. So this is a unique opportunity. Over the next year, I think it can be a case of who as much as what you know, and your networking skills, which are often awesome, definitely will come in very handy indeed. Virgo, your great gift is your ability to work on what's immediately in front of you in a very efficient and practical and applied way. That means that you're very discriminating. You can really concentrate your powers of critical thinking often very sharp. But what Uranus has been doing is pushing you over time to just be a little bit more experimental, not be so caught up in that small, very, very important and intense role that you often are involved with, and start to see yourself in a wider perspective. So at this present time, as we do have the Sun, Jupiter and Venus all cresting together in your ninth house, if you do feel like the need for a holiday or a vacation, or to do something completely different, or to just embrace your freedom and independence, even around a hobby, you don't need to change the whole of your life. Whatever you experiment with at this time can work out extremely favorably for you. Libra, if you are an entrepreneurial person and you're looking to raise some sources of finance, or to get an investor or a shareholder to come in with you, or someone who will be just as invested emotionally and in terms of a talent as you, a great time to go for it. But of course, the 8th house can be about transitions, and it may be that some kind of legacy or inheritance could come your way. If it doesn't happen straight away, it could still occur over the next year. Or equally, you could be moving your longer term finances around, perhaps pension pot, moving savings into something that gives you a better rate of return. But the 8th house, of course, can also be about very deep and passionate intimacy, and with your ruler in the mix, if you are loved up and it's going well, the chances are you can be extremely happy to be spending a lot of time in one another's deep and passionate embrace. Now, if you read or watched a video a year ago telling you that you were going to meet the love of your life with Jupiter moving through your 7th house, it wasn't on my channel. What you would have heard from me is there's the potential to improve your contacts and interactions with others. But that potential had to compete with the tension that is Uranus in your 7th house, which can in some ways dramatically draw you into situations, but also want you to separate from situations that aren't working. But because Venus is cresting into this event as well, if there is someone that you're getting on really well with, and it may just be completely platonic, a colleague, a friend, someone you share a hobby with, or maybe in a romantic context, this will be a lovely time to celebrate. Not necessarily that you see everything the same way, but you can bring different parts of each other into the equation, which actually is quite a sweet and enjoyable mix. But if you are single and you would like to meet someone and it hasn't happened over the last year, be assured it could happen over the next. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your ruler, so you have a great appreciation of him. But for you, this equation occurs in house 6. House 6 is very much to do with where we supply services. We're devoted, we're very conscientious, virtuous. It's not particularly sexy, but you know, if you are someone who really loves animals, this could be a time that a new furry friend makes their way into your life, whether it's that stray that keeps turning up at your front door, or you go to a rescue centre to bring some love into your world and your love into their world, all entirely possible because of the affection of Venus and the potential for joy that can come through a jovial ruler, Jupiter. But the 6th house is also about work, and perhaps the opportunity, which is a good word, or the luck, can come in that area or arena. Or it's possible that if you do want to just get your health and energy working a little bit better, having Venus and Jupiter together in the 6th house will make it difficult to be really self-disciplined. But what it can do over the next year, the exact combination between the Sun and Jupiter, is bring a little bit more energy. And I think Uranus has been a rogue influence at times. It's not been easy. It has created tension, a brittle energy at times, and obviously with Saturn in house 4 along with Neptune as well, your emotional world has been shifting at quite a rate of knots. But something good can come if you give to a situation, you could get it back. And that's where the animal analogy works so well, because that's what works with animals, isn't it? The more we give them, the more they give back. But the same can be true for you around your work, or perhaps some kind of voluntary role or input that you take on from now and over the next 12 months. Capricorn, I've got to be honest with you, what a delicious set of energies for you. For sure, we do have that midpoint in Leo in a very tense exchange with Pluto in your second house, so money needs to be right. But if money is right and there isn't any politics like jealousy or possessiveness or control, your social life really can crest up marvellously well now, maybe even more so over the next year. The interesting thing is, it could be people that you work with or come into contact with in very practical situations that some kind of new connection can develop. And it could be a new connection that brings an awful lot of joy to your situation. Having Venus and Jupiter and the Sun all in the 5th house is a great counterpoint to the taut tension that Uranus has created in the last few years. Yes, it's pushed you to be more experimental, to really embrace the part of your nature that maybe is a little different and not quite so conventional. And all of that is all well and good, and there may have been some very delightful experiences, but I feel there's also been some jarring ones. This gives you a chance to make your life, in terms of your peacefulness and happiness and enjoyment of things, really come to life in the most special of ways for the next 12 months. Aquarius, there has been a lot of restlessness around where you've lived, and as you know, I have been discussing this quite a bit, all around the family situation. Now can be a great chance to get where you're living, or your emotional relationships working that much more sweetly. And there could be some good piece of news. You know, if you're looking to raise some money to do a home improvement, you may get it. You could, if you're cautious, get the person who can do what you need exactly as you like. As ever, these things are usually a little bit fraught at times, but the end product would be worth it, because what you're now able to imagine and then create in reality is a much more peaceful cocoon where you can lead your life and really flourish. And believe me, as the Sun, Venus and Jupiter all race into your air colleague of Gemini, things are going to get much more outgoing, much more playful, much more sociable very, very soon, and you're going to be at the heart of it. So Pisces, this clustering of energy is brilliant for expressing your ideas. As much as Uranus has been pushing you to learn new things, think differently, freshen up your approach in general, perhaps get even a bit more physically fit and moving around more, learning much more about technology. It hasn't necessarily all been easy. There may have been times when you felt very tense, but all that knowledge that you've accrued in the recent years of Uranus going through your 3rd house can come back to you brilliantly now. You've actually gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, but also your warmth and how you come across can be a very, very positive thing at the moment. And because your 2 rulers are activated in this particular event, it's a great time to mix and mingle and make connections with people who can be very meaningful to you. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me, and please do like, comment, share, or if you've yet to do so, subscribe.